Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today's edition of ClearTech Loop. I am Joe Peterson. I'm the CIO of Clarify 360 and the Chief Analyst at ClearTech Research, and I'm here today with Derek Fisher, founder of Securely Built. Hi, Derek.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Thanks for taking time to visit. In case you're not following Derek, you should. Derek and his company provide advisory services to mid-market firms for strategic planning, risk management, and regulatory compliance. He designs and implements security programs, including vuln management, secure SDLC, and incident response, in order to help firms strengthen their resilience. And he delivers cybersecurity education and training awareness to advance education and training to advance technical skills. With over 30 years of cybersecurity experience, Derek serves as director of Temple University's Cyber Defense and Information Assurance Program. So welcome, Derek.
Hey, thank you very much.
As you guys know, we do 3 rapid fire questions that are of the moment that security professionals are thinking about. So let's not deviate from the norm. Let's get going with question 1. Derek, how do we operationalize AI governance, and who is legally accountable when an AI agent makes an unauthorized decision?
So that's tricky, because I think one of the biggest challenges is that a lot of organizations don't know where the AI is being used. So there's, whether it's being used within sanctioned platforms, Salesforce, if you're creating workflows within there to automate and create features, and that's great. But then there's also shadow AI, where people are able to, whether you're going directly to ChatGPT or Claude, or you're creating your own local agents and utilizing local LLMs. I mean, this is one of those things where it's very difficult to put the toothpaste back in the bottle, right, or the tube, because once these tools are in the hands of everybody, it's very hard to get a grip on where it's being used, how it's being used, and more importantly, how is the company data being used in those systems. One of the podcasts I was listening to recently, I think it was yesterday, they were talking about how, when we had these massive changes in technology, like let's take nuclear technology as an example here, as a collective, as a society, we all decided, like, hey, this is very powerful technology. We really need to get our hands around it, make sure that it's not, nobody can build a nuclear reactor in their home, right? And so that's a little different now, because we have a technology that could have very far-reaching implications, and yet it's pretty much in the hands of everybody. And so being able to get your hands around that and be able to make sure that we understand how decisions are being made and how we can get the appropriate controls around it can be difficult. But what that really starts with is having an AI governance board that's that is cross-cutting. So you don't want to just have it in the technology side, but you also need it, members of that governance board that are part of HR, that are part of legal compliance, and have that like cross-cutting across the organization, visibility into, what is it the organization really, what are the impacts of this technology? Above that, AI governance is really an executive leadership. Now, it depends on the organization who that executive or what that executive leadership looks like, but they should be the ones that are in control of the actual risk appetite of the organization as it relates to AI. So the executive at the top owns that risk appetite. The governance board below that really decides the standards and the way that any like exception use cases and things like that that need approval go through that AI governance board. But down in the trenches, you really have product owners. The product owners are the ones that are managing the use case outcomes. So, for instance, like if you have, if you're utilizing AI in order to, create, create better reporting or something like that within a certain business unit, the product owner of that particular area needs to have the at least in the lower levels, the ownership of the outcomes from that AI. But again, you have above that the governance board, above that the risk being owned at the executive leadership. So that's sort of the way, in a nutshell, that should be divvied up.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's very thoughtful in terms of the approach. Um, so I just heard MCP referred to as the confused deputy, which I thought was funny. How do we prevent agents from executing actions that the user should not be allowed to perform?
So, I think sometimes about AI agents specifically as I know this is like an oversimplification, but as a privileged account, right?
Mhm.
It's an account. It's a non-carbon user that has the ability to, make changes in the environment. I mean, we're not that. It's not that far removed from like a service account, with the
Okay.
exception that these are far more powerful, have far more access, can do more. With the service account, you sort of have a single direction or bi-directional type of interaction that you can
Mhm.
really kind of shape that what that traffic looks like and that interaction looks like. With MCP in particular, where you have clients and you have servers or clients and services that the MCP is making that connection to. It's a little bit different because tools can be added on the fly. So let's say if you take Claude as an example, that just happens to be my tool of choice. I can ask it to generate a Word document out of a text, that it output. It's utilizing MCP in the background to connect to a service to generate a Word document. That's a lot different than what we would typically see in like a service account type of activity. But it
Right.
really comes down to like shaping that access and putting the guardrails around it. So having the appropriate RBAC in control, rule based access control, or role based access control. Having also a registry of allowable services, like here are the services that this client is allowed to be able to access, in terms of like you can't just create connect to a service on the fly. Like it has to be in an allowable set of services that MCP is allowed to connect to. Putting those guardrails around in terms of how it interacts with those services, and also having auditing in place, so that like, okay, here's what it did, here's what it connected to, here was the way it interacted, and so that you're able to at least peel back the onion at some point should something go wrong, that you're able to at least audit that interaction. And then really just having that transparency around how the MCP, how it's making those connections between the services and the client, and knowing what types of, you know, again, that sort of ties into that auditing, but like, what is that? What is it? How is it thinking about making those connections? How is it thinking about, you know, uh, meeting the goals of what the client is asking? So it really comes down to, again, shaping that connection, having a solid auditing around what it's doing, and then having that visibility into it, and then really just having those guardrails in place, shaping the type of traffic that it's allowed to do.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Um, One of the things I think about and I wonder how we solve for is there's more and more MCP servers coming into everyone's environment somehow, some way. How do organizations verify the authenticity and security of these third party servers coming in?
And this comes back down, and I don't mean to like sort of like tie back down into like what's sort of been security classic or whatever, but I think it comes down to third party management, like we've been
Yeah.
doing third party risk management.
Yeah.
The first thing is what business need is this particular, um, you know what business need is this really solving? Like, what problem are we solving with this?
Yeah.
Because, again, we would ask that question in a third party risk assessment, is like, do we need this? Like, do we not already have this capability? Is this something that we really need to go external for, or use, another service before onboarding them? So really, what is the value, and what is the problem that this particular case is solving? And then it comes down to, um, understanding, do we have an internal team that's actually capable of being able to manage this? Because
Mhm.
again, looking at like a third party risk assessment, like, okay, we can get this tool and bring it in, but do we have people that have, number one, the knowledge to be able to manage this tool, or utilize it appropriately? Do we have the ability to provide proper oversight for it, and so forth? And then also, compliance and regulatory, more importantly, like the regulatory aspects of utilizing that service. Is there concerns in that aspect? Do we have concerns about how our data is being used? Do we have concerns about, the way they're processing the data, the information we're getting back? Are we, doing critical, or making critical decisions based on the interaction that we have there? So, those are sort of, again, not to sort of put it in the same bucket as like third party risk assessment, but it
Yes.
sort of is that, right? We should be treating it in the same way. AI is not AI is a novel way for us to sort of tackle technical problems, but at the same time, it's a tool, it's a technology tool that we should be leveraging as much of our kind of learned experience and learned knowledge to be able to apply in this case. Yes, it's more powerful. Yes, it can do more things, but in essence, we should be utilizing what we already know from a security standpoint, on how to better get our hands around it.
Right. And I asked that, and you went exactly where I think you needed to with that one. Is I want to draw out the idea that I don't think people are asking the question. Right. It's just for whatever reason, there's some sort of disconnect. And sure, large companies have lots of talented folks, but the smaller you get in terms of companies, the less bench you normally have. And not that those people aren't smart, but they're overworked, and they just may not have enough resources. And I don't think sometimes the question's getting asked. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I sort of think about, and I was thinking about this the other day, that we've been complaining for so long, in cybersecurity and technology, and in general, that like we have people that are just burned out. You're
Yeah.
working many hours, you're never getting ahead, you're never catching up. This is our moment to utilize these tools, whether it's, AI, well, particularly AI, to be able to hopefully reduce that cognitive load, and hopefully reduce that amount of stress and burnout in the people that we employ. And hopefully AI is going to be a solution to that. And I hope that is the direction we're heading. Sorry, I hope that sort of answers your
It
question.
did. It was perfect. It was a perfect answer, and you and I are thinking about it the same way. So that was great. Well, it's been great to have you visit. Thank you so much for taking time to visit with me. And guys, we'll catch you later.
Thank you.